If the US attacks its own people with nuclear weapons and blames Syria or Iran, it will have the Pandora's premise to declare martial law and invoke its NDAA powers across the world. In light of Senator Lindsey Graham's paranoid warning that a nuclear weapon could go off in the United States if the United States did not bomb Syria, conservative radio talk show host Michael Savage has followed the story of several nuclear force command generals who have been fired by the Obama administration and the unprecedented secret removal of United States nuclear ordnance from Dyess Air Force Base for purposes unknown. If a nuclear weapon is exploited on American soil, the real perpetrators are much more likely to be persons working for or alongside the US government.
Is Obama purging the military of leaders, and why? Are there any updates?
What concerns me the most is all of these generals, not just generals, all these nuke commanders being fired and suspended, all by these higher-ups that are behind all of the nuclear weapons in the whole United States. And then they're appointing this guy that's been with the Pentagon since 2009, and it looks as if he is the guy that's going to do whatever they say. My speculation, based on what the source is telling me, based on this information, is that these new commanders have been fired and suspended because they would not play ball. They were not okay with an unsigned, off-the-record nuke transfer to South Carolina. And they were not okay with Lindsey Graham coming out and saying, hey, if we don't attack Syria, we could get nuked. And unfortunately, it seems like my source, they might have found who it is, and they threatened him or something like that because he's not speaking out anymore. So there are red flags going on. Well, I think the key thing here is that by just speaking about this, we might be stopping something. But as of right now, I think we're actually shielding this nation by just exposing this information.
In exchange for accepting losses of liberties, having heightened security checks, CCTV cameras and expanded police powers, the public have accepted a new form of security, which may not be very secure at all. The coalition of the willing now wages terrible and costly wars, seeking out weapons of mass destruction, even when there are none to be found. But the war on terrorism is of course illusory and now horribly misdirected. Fukushima is the weapon of mass destruction par excellence. Those mystery 1,300 spent fuel rods, whether burned already, partially or not at all, are merely a mirror to the 91% of leaking reactors across the world, and the thousands upon thousands of water-cooled spent fuel rods perilously stacked together and staggered all over the world, near the very reactors that they were expended in, and often placed near huge population centers, in reactor buildings and facilities that rely largely on 1960s and 70s technology. Workers tending the Fukushima plant itself are poorly paid, hastily and questionably assembled, and lacking in training and morale and equipment. Any mistake or act of God could easily trigger a chain reaction that would release the whole of the plant's nuclear inventory, its reactor cores, its larger and adjacent fuel pools, and vast radioactive water storages. A succinct explanation of why the US or coalitions of the willing will not intervene and assist so that the Battle of Fukushima can begin can perhaps be found not at Fukushima, but deep within the bulkheads of the evacuated USS Ronald Reagan. Deep inside its hull are two Westinghouse A4W nuclear reactors. The Reagan, like every other branch of the US military of course, is nuclear armed. The US military wields nuclear hardwares such as depleted uranium ammunition, nuclear-tipped tomahawks and giant ICBMs. Every one of these nuclear missiles is owned and controlled not by the military, but by the Department of Energy. It is the kingpin of the military-industrial complex, replete with revolving door connections to corporations like Bechtel, Monsanto, GE, Toshiba, and of course Westinghouse. For the US military to begin the Battle of Fukushima, if any victory or redemption can be won at all at this stage, would be a direct attack not merely on the prestige and profit, but the very existence of nuclear power. It would be attacking the very hand that feeds it, that enriches its own on-ship nuclear weapons arsenal, and provides the ship itself propulsion through the 2 on-board nuclear reactors.
I met with the Navy when I was in San Diego. They searched me, wouldn't let me videotape anything, and we talked about the fight that went on in the Situation Room with the military and the Department of Energy. Now, we know, I reported it, and it came out that Briner from Cal Berkeley, and now it's public domain, that there was a 32-panel team put together in the Situation Room, put together by the president, and he is running that show. I'm heavily involved with the Marine culture. I know for a fact that the Navy and the Marine is going to war over Fukushima. They're fighting tooth and nail with the Department of Energy, and the Department of Energy won out in the early days. You know, in the USS Reagan, they were all sent in. And it goes even much further than that. You know, and Jacko's confirmed it himself. You listen to Gregory Jacko, and he, you know, when you listen to him, people have to be careful, too, and realize that he cannot cross the line. He was in the Situation Room. He'll be worse off than Snowden if he crossed the line. The Department of Energy is a cabal of evil from hell, and they have power even over the Navy and the Marines. And this is coming from the Navy down there, the personnel and the Marines that I have. They wanted in. They wanted in. They had the people in the early days, and it was the Department of Energy, which is, by the way, you know, it's the Department of Nuclear, has pushed them to the side, and that's who's running the show. I don't know what kind of roll of the dice the nuclear industry is playing. I mean, that this is just somehow going to go away and we're going to keep building plants. I mean, we got one ready to go online in Georgia. I think that is the arrogance of the Department of Energy. And I think
who they work for, Kevin? They work for the throne of England.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she has most of the uranium. She owns most of the uranium deposits in the world.
Oh, and it's true. It's absolutely true. You know, we fought against the freaking Queen in 1774, and that's what this is. We gave it all back. We got rid of tariffs, we got rid of usury laws, and they are all in uranium. I mean, that's their big, it's not even the nuclear industry, it's the uranium. You know, the depleted uranium in every single weapon there is. And, you know, what did I read? Her net worth has gone up. I'm an ex-hedge fund guy. Her net worth over the last 20 years has, like, went up 18,000%. Because of
trillions and trillions of dollars, and you know, but that's just the beginning of what they control.
If the nuclear aspect of the Fukushima disaster can remain hidden, the nuclear industry and the military-industrial complex can survive and thrive and carry on the war on the people of the world. Even if a nuclear reactor were ever developed that was safe and economically viable and did not even create nuclear bombs somehow, it would still be irrelevant in light of the unprecedented disaster at Fukushima, born of nuclear technologies that preceded it. Pandora's promise was never a fast breeder reactor. It was a series of promises made in 1945, promises reneged upon that are killing the biosphere as we speak. After Hiroshima was bombed on August 6, 1945, the U.S. Secretary of War, who oversaw the bomb's creation and secured all the necessary funding from Congress, assured the public in a statement, "Atomic fission holds great promise for sweeping developments, by which our civilization may be enriched when peace comes. It will be a matter of further research and development to design machines for the conversion of atomic energy into useful power. Mindful of the grave problems that arise concerning the control of the weapon and the implications of this science for the peace of the world, every effort is being bent towards assuring that this weapon and the new field of science that stands behind it will be employed wisely in the interest of the security of peace-loving nations and the well-being of the world." A promise made, and subsequently made a complete mockery of. Whether or not Henry Stimson's promise was genuine is irrelevant, as what has transpired since are thousands of above-ground nuclear tests, the proliferation of toxic and leaking nuclear power plants, and nuclear weapons, horrific, yet officially downplayed nuclear accidents, widespread dumping of toxic nuclear waste, culminating in the cancer epidemic we witness today in the old and the young. The rise of socially and environmentally regressive and unregulated corporations like GE, Bechtel, and Monsanto, all key members of the ever war-waging military-industrial complex, and now the permanent and ongoing poisoning of the Pacific Ocean and its jet stream. Notably, Monsanto, the key player in the enrichment of uranium in the wartime Manhattan Project, has been the foster parent of deadly poisoning and mutation of the food supply, both through the radiation released from atomic fission it helped to create, and now complemented by its genetic modification of crops and seeds, made more and more universal by its infiltration into the US Food and Drug Administration and equivalent government bodies across the world. Bill Gates, who proselytizes about saving the third world, and the world in general from global warming, is a major Monsanto investor, a promoter of nuclear power, and financier of climate engineering and weather modification. We think of World War III as an unrestricted nuclear ballistic missile confrontation between nations. But in fact, World War III may have begun decades ago through other means, but no less deadly.
And then, of course, and this is the big one, with the atmospheric nuclear testing, 1952 to 1980. Because what I conclude in all of this, and I think I've said it before, is that actually, even if everything went up from Fukushima, it would still not be as much as the injection into the world environment, the global environment, from the combined atmospheric nuclear tests between 1952 and 1980. It comes to about 60% of them. So if we take all of the radionuclides that came out in the atom bombs and the explosions that occurred in the Marshall Islands, the United States Marshall Islands tests, and then of course the British tests at Christmas Island and the French tests at Mururoa and in North Africa, and then of course the enormously big Russian tests in Kazakhstan, the Tsar bomber, which was 40 megatons. These tests blew an enormous amount of radioactivity up into the stratosphere, where it came pitter-patter down after about 1959 through to 1964, and the strontium-90 built up in everybody's bones, and the iodine went everywhere, and the tritium increased, and carbon-14 increased, and Sakharov and Pauling both said that this would cause enormous increases in cancer, which of course it has done. And so compared to that, if the whole of Fukushima goes up, it will only be about the same as that. But actually, it'll be a lot less than that. And the reason is that the atmospheric test blew all this stuff into the global environment with their enormous power.
But what we have now is something that is almost universal and global. And the situation, because of the sheer magnitude of the problem, the level of radionuclide emissions into the environment from all sorts of sources, from the depleted uranium, from the new super weapons that use uranium, from the endless leaking of these nuclear power stations, which have just continued and are getting worse because as the nuclear power stations themselves are getting old. All of these things have conspired together to increase the concentration of radionuclides in the environment to a level where it is now threatening life on Earth. There's no question that it is reducing fertility, that it is increasing cancer, and the future looks really quite bleak. And particularly it looks bleak because of what I can now go on to. You asked me to look at this Fukushima situation.
But what you say so eloquently is what Eisenhower in his farewell address warned about. He said the military-industrial complex has been seized by corporate interest, and it itself is then seizing the entire scientific complex to where they will be unopposable. And now they've hired all these mercenary scientists that will go along with anything. And it does seem like the madness of Nero or something.
It's not. It's even worse, because not only do they acquire scientists by paying them money, in order to provide bogus scientific reports that support their position. But anyone who happens to stand up and say something which they don't like, or find something which goes against their crazy worldview, this person gets swiftly dealt with. I mean, I can name names. There was a young scientist in Sweden called Martin Tondell who discovered that there was a significant increase in cancer in the northern Sweden after the very small amounts of radioactivity conventionally expressed that fell in northern Sweden after the Chernobyl accident. Now, he was swiftly dealt with by his boss. His boss is a chap called Lars Erik Holm, who was the ex-head of the International Commission on Radiological Protection, and is now, would you believe, can you imagine, the medical officer of health for Sweden.
Wow.
So if you want to know what's happening in Sweden in terms of health, you go to Lars Erik Holm. And we can find many, many, many situations in which this sort of thing happens.
Monsanto.
It's a sort of third world war, isn't it? It's the governments versus the people.
The ultimate comeuppance of this promise, from the opening of Pandora's box in 1945, is the runaway radioactive contamination and poisoning of the biosphere. It stems from a deep-seated poisoning of the institutions and even NGOs that we would have thought should have protected us or warned us of the dangers. These bodies have supped at the table of the nuclear industry, or let it, or pure rent-seeking, silence them. All these fail-safes and supposed guardians of the public interest have failed in colossal terms at Fukushima. If nuclear proliferation, or a nuclear false flag, 9/11 style attack results in even a limited nuclear war, we will get on top of inexorable decay of ecosystems and our own DNA, a massive irreversible climate change, not from carbon dioxide that plants breathe, but from the resultant nuclear winter for hundreds of years, ending all life on Earth, except perhaps burrowing insects, or some organisms living off deep-sea volcanic vents. The dark truth of what was promised was more honestly spoken of by Einstein, who declared that the splitting of the atom would lead to unparalleled catastrophe, and Robert Oppenheimer.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
The macabre promise foreseen by Oppenheimer and Einstein is becoming fulfilled with frightening aplomb. It is indeed completely befitting of the mythology of Pandora's box used by Robert Stone, as indeed all the evils are being released into the world. And in the end, two of the three key figures in the bomb's creation, Einstein, Oppenheimer, like Pandora herself, were deeply saddened and guilt-ridden for opening the box. Yet Stimson died believing the bomb, and his legacy could usher in still a new era of peace.
Is there any form of safe atomic or nuclear power?
No, there isn't. It's not possible to constrain the atom. It's not possible to do anything with the atom that is safe enough, that prevents releases of these radionuclides. And all of these radionuclides have significant harmful effects at very, very low concentrations. So the answer is no, you can't do that. But the people in the United States have their own problems, and the dangers there are much greater from the local nuclear sites.
I was about to say, now whenever they have a leak or a problem, they don't even tell you.
No, that's right. And so if you're worried about radioactivity in fish, you want to worry about the fish that swim in the river which is fed water by the nuclear reactor near you, because a map that I've seen of the United States with nuclear reactors is like somebody's thrown a lot of darts at it. There are an awful lot of nuclear reactors, and they're all very old, and they're all falling to pieces, and they're all leaking like sieves, and it's all going into the ground, and it's all going into your food and your water.
Sure,
and
what
the
about
air.
the number that I see of 91%? CBS News says 75% of reactors are leaking. Well, what's the real number from your research?
I would think 100% is the number that are leaking. It's absolutely not possible to function with a nuclear power station without it leaking. It can't be done.
Just exactly how much spent fuel we have here in the United States at the 100 plus nuclear reactors around the country?
Well, we have the largest inventory of spent fuel in the world. It's about, it's been recently reported to be, at this time, about 71,000 metric tons. And it really represents the largest concentration of radioactivity on the planet. And what we found is that these pools are vulnerable, and that the United States, for the last several decades, has permitted the reactor operators to put as much as 4 times more in the spent fuel pools than their designs envisioned.
4 times?
That's right.
So just relative to what's happening in Fukushima, do we have 4 times the quantity of what is now being stored at the reactors in Fukushima?
Oh, easily, and then more.
No, but I mean at each reactor.
That's right. That's right. I mean, the Fukushima reactor basically on the average contain about 100 metric tons. Spent fuel pools in the United States contain as much as 500, 600, 700 metric tons.
Okay, so let's turn to the response from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to your report. What was it?
What we reported, which I think is important, is that these pools were vulnerable, and that if they were something caused them to drain, they would lose their water. The temperature in the spent fuel, because of the radioactive material decaying, would get so high that it would cause essentially the cladding of the fuel to catch fire and release catastrophic amounts of radioactivity. And we estimated that a single pool fire in the United States at a typical reactor could render an area uninhabitable substantially greater than that created by the Chernobyl accident. The Chernobyl accident created an area of inhabitability that's roughly the size of half of New Jersey.
So you're suggesting that this would be even greater than that? Greater than half of New Jersey, and how much greater?
4 to 5 times. The response by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the nuclear industry was hostile.
Why do you think the NRC was so hostile to this report and its findings?
I think that the NRC has become entirely too codependent on the nuclear industry which it regulates.
The situation in which we find ourselves cannot be forged into some warm, fuzzy afterglow moment about harnessing new technologies that have in truth just been rebranded as new and improved and green, because that would be a lie. The only positive to gain is that upon enough of us fully grasping the truly dreadful nature of what is happening in the Pacific, we can take positive steps to urgently inform others of what we know and unseat our leaders and institutions who have betrayed our trust and are destroying this world and promise peace, but instead administer deadly radioactive poison.
I see a lot of people putting effort into getting, petitions and, calling their congressmen and all this, and I think it's a waste of time. Yeah. They're not going to do anything. They are not going to go against these corporations till, everything in the Pacific is dead. I mean, that's how bad it's going to have to get before anybody acknowledges it, and they'll probably still lie to us. So, I mean, it's up to us and social media to use every avenue that we have to reach.
That's it. Our only chance, and I've known this from even before it happened, was our only chance is popular opinion. That is our only chance.
It is we who can make a promise to the present, to the future, and to the memory, the suffering and toil of those who came before us, to let the truth be known, for the truth may just be enough to set us nuclear free. The betrayal at Fukushima and at nuclear plants must be ended. A credible international task force must be sent to Fukushima now. World War III must be stopped, and the very possible and so easily induced foray into thermonuclear war, World War IV, must be avoided at all costs. By avoiding and not fighting the Battle of Fukushima, our government and corporate masters have left it up to us to take responsibility, to push and clamour for this dreadful disaster to be fixed or mitigated, for much of northern Japan to be evacuated, for the deliberate spread of radiation through incineration and obscured contamination of the food supply to end, for health advisories and radiation reports to be given freely, and the evacuation of affected parts of North America to be made where necessary. Those who do not represent us faithfully must be replaced, or we will be replaced, or more bluntly, annihilated. The war on terrorism should be a war on real terrorists, and they are to be found within, defined by their warmongering and domestic internal terrorism and simultaneous silence on what is really killing us and the planet. The flagship organizations of the Green Movement have been blatantly fighting the wrong war in obsessing about carbon dioxide that is perfectly non-toxic and beneficial to plants and animals that live off them. At Fukushima, they have grossly failed to uphold even their own vaunted precautionary principles. If our generation will not be the one to right nuclear wrongs in battle, then the Battle of Fukushima will have to be fought and lost by the valiant but outmatched DNA and immune systems of the children we are biologically and morally tasked to protect first, and defenseless organisms, since the radiation will by then have become too great if we delay. The Battle of Fukushima must be begun and won before If war is indeed an omen for death, we can only hope that in our struggle to avoid annihilation, it can be forged into an omen of death, not to ourselves, but to all things nuclear, so that all other things may live.
Side to side. Thank God the week is done. I feel like a zombie. Come back to life, back to life. Hands up, and suddenly we all got our hands up. No control of my body. Ain't I seen you before? I think I remember those eyes, 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 eyes. Baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. Yeah, baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. So dance, dance like it's the last night of your life. I'ma get you right. 'Cause baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. Keep downing drinks like this. No tomorrow, not just right now, now, now. Gonna set the roof on fire, gonna burn this mother. Down, 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 da, down, down. Hands up. When the music drops, we both put our hands up. Put your hands on my body. Swear I've seen you before. I think I remember those eyes, 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 eyes. Baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. Yes, baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. So dance, dance like it's the last night of your life. I'ma get you right. 'Cause baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. So dance, dance like it's the last night of your life. I'ma get you right. 'Cause baby, tonight the DJ's got us falling in love again. I just gotta.